Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. How are you, Hannah?
I am well, and how are you?
Good. Good evening to you. We got a lot to talk about in this episode.
Oh, yes, we do.
And for the first time in a few weeks, we're not going to be centered around Andor. We are going to talk about Andor, but we had a brand new series just dropped this week. 6 episodes. Tales of the Jedi. We got a lot to go. We got a lot to go there. We got a lot to talk about there. So we will get to that. Like I said, of course, episode 8 of Andor and some real brief news. But first and foremost, of course, thank you to our patrons, as always, for tuning in. Your support is highly, highly appreciated. And of course, if you're interested in going to and supporting the show, go to patreon.com/inside the force. Got all new tiers on there. Putting up some exclusive video just for Patreon and nothing else. So you're listening on the podcast feed. Obviously, you still get us here. Our YouTube channel will have all of our additional shows, including Beyond the Saga that me and Hannah do with all those stories beyond the Skywalker films, and of course, get some merch, So, which I do have the store kind of there. It's almost there. This weekend, I think I'm gonna add some unique stuff on there that's gonna get pushed out there. But anyway, all right. Thank you again, patrons, and continue to keep watching and adding your feedback, and it's much appreciated. All right, first thing first, real quick on some news. Nothing necessarily, film or TV related and whatnot. Just some congratulations actually is in order, because the Saturn Awards happened this past week, and some notable Star Wars series won some awards. I want to just say, Hannah, I don't know if you saw any of this.
I did not.
Oh, so this is going to be good for you to hear. So Best Animated Series, Star Wars The Bad Batch won Best Animated Series.
Okay.
Pretty awesome.
Yes.
For Best Limited Series, Obi-Wan Kenobi
Okay.
won.
Good for
that. And that beat Book of Boba Fett, Hawkeye, Midnight Mass, Ms. Marvel, and Moon Knight.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Huh.
Best Actress in a Streaming Series, Ming-Na Wen for Book of Boba Fett.
I did see that.
Fantastic. She beat Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
She beat Elizabeth Olsen from WandaVision. And then you've got 2 other ones that were fantastic to hear. You had Moses Ingram actually won Best Supporting Actress in a series for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then the best of all.
Best of all.
Best Guest Starring Performance. Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader.
Of course.
I'm so happy that he's starting to get some recognition.
Yeah.
For being in Star Wars. That is fantastic. Congrats, Hayden.
Good job.
Yeah, unbelievable. So yeah, some big wins there for the Disney Plus series Star Wars on streaming there. So if you haven't heard that, there you go. Good, some winners out there. Go tweet at those people and tell them congratulations.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into. We got to get into Andor first. I think we're gonna save Tales towards the end here. We got to get into Andor first, and talk about that. So, episode 8, called Narkina 5.
Yes.
Which is the name of the planet or moon. I think it's a moon. It looks like.
Seems like it.
Yeah, that Andor is taken to prison, basically. Now, I was a little surprised I think we talked about this a little bit. Like if there was going to be somewhat of a time jump, there isn't one really. This takes place like literally right after the last episode. I mean, he's leaving the planet, that beach planet, that holiday planet, and he's heading to the prison. So he's there, and of course, a lot of not a lot of action in this episode, but a lot of dialogue, a lot of forward moving of the story and some of these characters. What did you think overall about episode 8?
Overall, this definitely is more of it's not a filler episode in the sense of, oh, we need to take up time. Let's hear a backstory, or let's do something that might be considered unnecessary to the main story. But it is a filler episode in the sense of, it's not I would say it's definitely a connector episode. I think it's setting up a lot of things that are going to be like, it's setting up a lot of serves, and then it's going to be spiked in the next episode. You have Mon Mothma, everything building up with her. Is she finally going to take that leap? You have Luthen, who's now going off, and who knows what's going to happen there. We start seeing Saw Gerrera come into the picture here. Who knows what role he's going to play, because he doesn't really seem that much of a team player. And we know he's not that much of a team player, but is he willing to play his part in the rebellion? You have Andor, who's like, there's no way out of this mess, but you start to see little things that he's noticing that could potentially, I don't know, but my prediction is he is going to head or be part of a huge coup that's going to happen to create a prison break for everyone. So I think this is a setup episode.
I see. Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, it's definitely that first episode in, this next 3 episode arc. I feel like, because I think it's pretty established that this arc is going to cover how he gets out of prison, right? So yeah, I think so. This was kind of a setup episode where we're showing you where these characters are right now, and what we're getting to. I think right now on the Andor side, you've got Andor obviously in prison trying to figure out how he's going to get out. Hopefully I think he's inside of himself. He's kind of hoping that they never find out who he really is, because that would be worse. And then of course you've got, you've got everybody in play now, because you got Cinta and Vel on Ferrix now. You've got Bix back in the picture, and then Deidre has found her way to Ferrix now from the Empire, and she's getting closer to discovering. I mean, obviously they brought up Cassian Andor. I mean, they know he's possibly involved in what happened. Definitely what happened at Ferrix, but then. And Marlena 1, and then now possibly with Aldhani. So, which I don't think they have made that connection fully yet, but they're well on their way. And then the whole, I tell you what, the one outlier for me, well, I'll get there in a second, but then, yeah, of course you got Luthen debating on how much to still go into it. And then you got Mothma still trying to play the Senate card, figuring out, who she can trust. Like you said, Saul is in it. It was just obviously a lot of characters in this. And then of course you've got the outlier, Cyril, which continues to be the guy that just can't cut a break. And I thought I kind of knew where his story was going, but now I'm like, what the heck's going to happen to this guy?
Yeah, totally. I mean, he obviously has a huge role to play. I think he's going to be playing a huge role with, what's her name?
Deidre.
I was going to say Mora. That's not right. Deidre. But yeah, you're right. It's always like, okay, well, this is definitely where his story is going. And then it doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, then this is where it's going. It doesn't go that way. So, I mean, he's obviously important,
Yeah, there's got to be a purpose. I mean, this guy can't all of a sudden just keep getting pushed on the sideline, and he stays there. I thought this was the episode. Deidre was going to say, "Okay, you're valuable. Come with," but then she completely shut him down. So it's like, okay, now how he's going to get in? Because I don't know how else he gets in besides maybe finally she realizes she needs his help. So that's the only way I can think that he gets in.
Well, that's what we think now, but then watching the next episode, it's going to be something completely different.
Right. Well, and honestly, now the way it's set up now with Deidre already on Ferrex and interrogating Bix, it's like, I don't even know if it wouldn't be surprised if he's not even in the next episode.
Maybe he plays a huge role in the next season. Like maybe
I definitely think he's going to survive this season. He has to, I guess. And okay. I do think in the end, you're right. I think in the end, next season, somehow he's got to be involved. He's got to cause Andor all kinds of headache.
Well, maybe it's everything fails on the Emperor's side. And so this whole season is his background of how he became the villain story. So then he's like, he pulls a Thanos and goes, fine, I guess I'll do it myself. And then that's season 2. Maybe. But now that we've thrown that out into the universe, it's not going to be that.
Right. So we also get introduced to a new character played by a familiar person, Andy Serkis, who I kind of was thinking, you know what? I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that he was going to be in a Star Wars series. I don't know if I knew it was going to be Andor, but it kind of flew under the radar because I don't remember anybody ever talking about him being in this. So I don't know if that was known or not. But he is now in this in Andor. Obviously, everybody should remember him. He's the voice of Snoke. Obviously, he's not Snoke in this.
Well, we don't know that. Maybe this is Snoke's origin story. Maybe that's the whole purpose of Andor is just Snoke's origin story.
We actually know Snoke's origin story now.
I know.
So, yeah.
If you don't read the comics, you don't get that.
That's right. But Snoke is Snoke. Andy Serkis is the lead of this, the leader kind of this floor that Andor's on. This is what I found to be, honestly, obviously we've always been praising the dialogue of this series, but on top of the dialogue, credit's got to go also to the overall writing of this series. And this is clearly an example, because you could have easily moved on from the last episode and move on with the fact that, okay, he got caught. He wasn't doing what he was doing, but he got caught, because we want to move this story along, right? So that's, to me, and we kind of talked about it last week, it was a little bit of a lazy way to do it. I feel like, all these people were running and he happened to be there. So, okay, we're going to arrest you too. And no matter what you did, you look like you were with them, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I get it. He had to get caught. We had to move on. But this episode does a hell of a job explaining why he was arrested. Mm-hmm. And that is the Empire. Because if you recall, if you look back at the people that got arrested there, they were all males. And they were all fit males. Because what's the Empire want? They need workers. So it's not really that they thought he was really doing something. Like, no. We need you to come here and work. I think that's brilliant writing. Brilliant.
It's spectacular. I mean, honestly, I think if you ever wanted to teach a writing course or a storytelling course, especially with the whole show do not tell, I think Andor is a perfect example in general. I think Andor is probably, up until this point, one of the best storytelling writing pieces we've seen come out of Star Wars. It's just totally agree. Brilliant. And then also, I think the thing is, we're media people, so we know that there are a lot of layers that go into telling a story. And sometimes people who don't necessarily know that or aren't necessarily always aware of that, because once you study it, you can never unsee it.
Yeah.
The acting's spectacular. And I think the reason why the acting is spectacular is because you have a strong script. You have strong set pieces and props and practicals. You have strong directing. So I think one of the reasons why the acting is so good is obviously the actors themselves. But I think the other part of it is you have this script that easily tells them what the subtext is and what is going on. And they're able to convey these really powerful characters. It's some of the best acting we've seen in Star Wars recently, in my opinion, as well.
Totally.
So, yeah, I mean, kudos to Andor in general.
Yeah, it's just a very good, high level attention to detail, about why things are happening. It's just not happening because it's cool or you want it fits, this character, but it fits all these characters and it fits this whole situation. And it's just now the thing it would be pretty really freaking cool, which I don't know if it matters this or not, but it'd be crazy if what they're working on and building are things for the Death Star.
That would be amazing. And I really
did you think about that?
Yeah, I did. I'm like, I'm like,
how ironic is it? He's helping build the Death Star.
I'm like flipping through my mind, like, have I seen that piece somewhere? Have I seen that piece somewhere in anything Star Wars related? Because, I feel like how far would the creation of the Death Star be at this point?
It's pretty much close to being finished.
Right.
But so you're talking about probably the final layers of it and the final thing. Maybe more so the interior. Probably the exterior has been built. It's probably just interior stuff. But that's the thing is Andor would never know because obviously he doesn't even know there's a super weapon until Rogue One. So, but these things are real small. It's like he could be building just like the pieces of the laser. Maybe that because the laser I don't think is done yet. The ultimate weapon. But so that'd just be ironic that he's helping build it and then finds out later what it is and then helps get the plans. Blah blah blah. So I think that'd be pretty neat. Don't know if that's the case or I honestly that again good writing. You don't need to explain what they're building. I mean, that's just kind of a fan service if they want to throw something like that in there, but that doesn't matter to the story.
Right.
What matters is that he's there, he's stuck. I love that we were introduced to Melshi, who obviously is in Rogue One as well. So I think you're on the right track in the sense that you believe that the way he's actually going to get out is from within. Because I was under the impression, I was under this thought process that, okay, well, Luthen wants him, so he's going to find a way to get him out. But I think that is a little far-fetched now because basically where they're at is pretty much impossible to get to without a massive armada of an army, and the rebels don't have that yet, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think you have to come from within.
I think so. And I mean, last time we talked about how we Saw Gerrera might even be the one to break him out. But obviously that's not the case because they're on two completely different planets.
Yep. So, and it doesn't sound like he wants to get involved with Luthen right now.
No, not at all, which was very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting conversation. So with Melshi there, you're right. I think there's something there. I think that they're planning something. It could be part of me feels like almost that whatever happens, like almost like a revolt or whatever uprising, and maybe because of that, maybe he's not necessarily part of the plan, but because of that, he's able to slip out
right
on his own and maybe grabs Melshi because obviously I don't think all of these people become rebels, right? I mean, most of them are probably imprisoned wrongfully also, just like him.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about it. They're like, oh, it's what all these rebels are doing.
Right.
So it could be they have a grudge against them, or it could be some of them are even like, I want to join their cause because this is bullcrap what they're doing to us.
True. Yes, that's true.
So, I mean, we didn't get a lot of that, but maybe next episode we will.
Mm-hmm. So what about the Mon Mothma scenes? I think, was there only one scene? Well, there was two scenes, but
really one. There was one important scene.
Yeah, she was basically just partying at her house, catering to other senators. Trying to get votes. What do you make of that scenes with her?
Once again, I mean, this actress deserves an Emmy. Because her acting is spectacular. She's always afraid. But also, I think that we finally get an answer to her marriage. That her marriage, it was traditional.
It was arranged.
Set up, it was arranged. So that's why. So I feel a little better about that.
Yeah, I did too.
I was about to be like, honey, what are you doing?
Yes.
But it sounds like they were arranged when they were very, very young.
Yeah, I think that is a standard in Star Wars, because I remember in Leia's novel, The Princess of Alderaan, I think around 13, 14, they were already talking about some kind of arranged thing with her.
Okay.
So I think the royalty, the upper class type lifestyle in Star Wars, I think, and obviously maybe it's just Sandrilla, maybe it's just Alderaan, I don't know, but either way, they both feel like they kind of came up the same way, Mothma and Leia.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's kind of the youngness of it. I don't think is that big of a deal.
But with that scene, I mean, you kind of see that Mon is being backed into a corner.
Yeah.
She's like, what do I do? Like, she's realizing that what she's been currently doing is not working anymore.
Right.
So I think that's going to help push her over the edge. I think Luthen's going to die in the next episode, and that's what's going to push her over the edge and going to make her say, you know what, we got to do this. It's now or never.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What were
but
your
she's just I grow more and more fond of her each episode. She is such a great actress.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, she was. I don't know. She was born to play this role. I don't know who else could have done this like her.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Not only does she look like Mon Mothma, the original Mon Mothma, but she's playing her brilliantly. I love what she's doing and how she's doing it. And I think that there's so much more that come from this. I think this is heading to, a very intense. Something intense is going to happen in this, about with the Empire. And I kind of think we're getting to know her husband and her daughter a little bit more, because there's going to be some kind of separation there. There's got to be.
There has to be.
Right? I mean, she can't go lead the rebellion still being married and playing mom and wife. So I think they're setting this up to where they're showing that connection, and they're showing that maybe there's not a love connection there, but there is an emotional connection. And at some point, it's got to get ripped apart. And it may not happen this season, but it definitely will happen in the next season.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, yeah, of course, we've got And then the Empire side, which is Deidre and the Imperial meetings that they had with Yularen, convinced that she's going to go there and start trying to figure out what's going on. And I was actually a little surprised to see all of a sudden Cinta showing up. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we only saw like on a speeder the last episode, just kind of driving away, and yeah, we're assuming she got off planet, showed up here.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what's then we had Luthen and heading over to see Saul. So that was a pretty intense scene. But it was just one scene. That's it. Then we moved on to the end there, seeing Bix getting. So where do you think? I know you're talking about the prison break from inside. Where do you think the Empire? Like, how do you think the Empire finds out about him being Andor while he's in prison at all?
I don't know. I don't know what that whole part plays in it. And I kind of at this point don't want to try to predict. I want to see it play out.
I feel like you have to. Well, I feel like they have to figure it out. I don't see how they couldn't, because if they couldn't, then I would say that their technology is really bad and outdated.
You would have thought they would have found out by now, though.
Well, I don't necessarily know if they have. Like, it doesn't seem like they've. Maybe they didn't. We just didn't see it, but it doesn't seem like they scanned all of these prisoners. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if they would have scanned their images, but he would have went in as whatever name he said.
Keith, yeah. But
then all of a sudden, Deidre now, if she's got Cassian's scan, then all of a sudden they just got to run the database, and all of a sudden there's a match, and then but I don't think they just haven't run that database yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. As I think they have to figure it out. I mean, I just think they have to figure it out.
They do.
But I think maybe by the time they figure it out, he may have been gone, or it might have lined up to where the prison break happens. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think they're going to find out, or they're at least not going to get there until after he leaves. So he knows he's got a bounty on his head. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that's right. Okay, well, I think that's all of it. I don't think there's anything that really else that stood out.
I don't think there was anything else that stood out in that episode. It was definitely more of a setup.
Yes. Okay. I don't think they told us where Saul is either, did they? I don't think they said.
No, I don't think they said where Saul is.
Yeah. So we don't know where he's hanging out, but he obviously looks a lot better than he did in Rogue One. He's not as torn apart. He looks more of a soldier, which is good. Forrest Whitaker is just incredible anyway. So, okay. So that's Andor, episode 9, obviously coming out next week. We only got 4 episodes left.
Ooh, almost done.
Of the series. I know. Pretty awesome. Okay. Of course, right before we get into Tales of the Jedi here, let's see your release schedule coming out. No novels until the High Republic Convergence, which is November 22nd. And then the Battle of Jeddah, January 3rd. That's an audio book. And then Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars, March 7th. Cataclysm, April 4th. Path of Vengeance, May 2nd. And then Inquisitor, the new book that was announced a couple of weeks ago. Rise of the Red Blade, July 18th of next year. Mm-hmm. And then next week on your comics, shelf coming: Star Wars 29, Bounty Hunters 28, and Mandalorian number 5. Okay, there you go with that. So Tales of the Jedi. Now, Tales of the Jedi consists of 6 episodes and basically 3 episodes dedicated to 2 different characters that does kind of connect a little bit in a sense. But you've got Ahsoka Tano and you've got Count Dooku. Now, I thought the first interesting thing about this was, I'm assuming, which I think it's right. I'm assuming these are laid out chronologically, because it was kind of odd that you started with Ahsoka for 1 episode, and then you did 3 episodes of Dooku, and then you finished with 2 episodes of Ahsoka. So it wasn't like 3 and 3. So if you think about the timeline, it's in chronological order, as far as birth of Ahsoka, and then what happens to Dooku, and then you jump forward to the Clone Wars where you pick up where Ahsoka is, kind of thing. So that's why I think they're laid out that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's which one you want to talk about first? You want to talk about characters, Dooku or Ahsoka?
Oh, let's talk about Ahsoka first.
Okay.
Save the best for last. Let's talk about Ahsoka first.
All right, Ahsoka first. Ooh, best for last. That's it. That's an interesting take.
That's my opinion anyway.
I probably think that's right, but let's see. Okay, so Ahsoka. She was episodes 1, 5, and 6. First episode, Life and Death. Then Practice Makes Perfect, and then Resolve. So, all right, we saw the birth of Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. Life and Death, first episode there for her. What'd you think overall of that one?
I thought that was really, really cool to see a little more of her culture, where she came from. There's definitely more of a tribe feel. There really isn't. It's like everyone is part of the same family. There isn't necessarily of you're a family, you're a family, you're a family. We all happen to live together. It's very much of no, we're a community.
Yes.
A child is all of we consider that child our own. So that was really cool. And then also, it really makes a lot of sense how Ahsoka has so much fight in her now. Mm-hmm. Just because her mom did instill in her from the beginning to realize that death is a part of life, but also not to fear it.
Yes, right.
And then, she also is apparently very natural in the Force when it comes to animals. So
yeah. Which, it's funny because I was trying to think back if that really, how much that really connected with her throughout the Clone Wars series. And the only thing that I can think of, it comes back to kind of that, and I gotta look up the name of it, that flying bird creature that's kind of connected to her. That's kind of the animal connection, I'm assuming, is what they're implying. Obviously she's not connected to like a tiger thing, I don't remember ever seeing anything like that in Clone Wars or Rebels with her.
It's her D&D familiar.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but that's
it's like a pet that you can do anyway. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So it's like a pet.
It's like a companion.
Animal that's companion. Yeah, a companion.
It's a companion who can help you on different tasks, who can also fight for you, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I mean,
so it's the Morai. The Morai is the bird that is kind of connected to Ahsoka. Is first introduced, I believe, in the Mortis storyline. Morai was the female convoy with spiritual ties to the daughter, a Force wielder from Mortis. So you remember that Mortis arc?
Yes.
Yeah, the daughter, she is kind of connected to that, and then it's hovering there when Vader shows up at the end of Clone Wars season 7, it's hovering there. I think it's there when when Ahsoka or Ezra goes to the world between worlds, blah blah blah. It's like her spirit animal almost, right? Mm-hmm. But so I don't know if that was kind of the reason why they kind of showed this. I'm not really sure. Like, of all the episodes, like when I went back and rewatched all these episodes tonight, honestly, I didn't go back and rewatch this one. I rewatched the other one.
This is my least favorite out of the 6.
I mean, it's cool to see her origin for sure. Mm-hmm. But the Beast thing and, coming back, I mean, it was a cool moment, but I was actually waiting to see, the grandmother or maybe the mother of the village or whatever called her a Jedi, right? I was really interested in seeing the process of actually the Jedi coming and taking her. Like, that would have meant more to me.
I was about to ask, like, how young do Jedi start showing that they're Force sensitive? Is it as young as a baby, or is Ahsoka? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was kind of hoping it was going to be because that would be really interesting to witness. To see.
Yeah, because I don't know if. Yeah, because it's in some of the material I've read, I feel like most parents that sense that or see that their kids are Force sensitive, like they're almost willing to just right away basically call the Jedi up and say, hey, will you come take a look at my child? And I think I believe what happens is the Jedi will come and not test them, but check them out, sense if there's something there. And sometimes they decide no, sometimes they decide yes. Mm-hmm. And it's yes. It's like the parents are willing to give the kid. Because I always wondered if there's parents out there that are like, no, we need to hide this because we don't want them to take our kid. I don't know. I don't feel like I've seen or heard a situation like that, but that's understandable.
Absolutely. You don't. I mean, I don't have kids, but I don't know if you'd be willing to let your daughters go.
Well, that's the thing. Is like it's almost like, are you willing to give up your child so that you know that they're going to be part of something that is going to ultimately help the galaxy or help the world? Like if you knew you were sacrificing that, I don't know. That's a tough. Because, the Jedi have been, especially something that's been established for thousands of years. It's like, it's kind of tradition in a sense, right? So, so I get it, but I would, like you said, though, I wish that we would see that process. We haven't seen that process yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. So anyway, first episode, we see the Force sensitivity come out, and then we jump. Her next story is until during the Clone Wars. We jump all the way. So we still don't. So it's assuming that she gets brought in at some point as a baby or maybe a toddler, and she's training basically throughout episode 1 and throughout the time between episode 1 and 2. And then, of course, her first appearance ever was the Clone Wars movie that kicked off the series, which was the start of the Clone Wars. So at that point, I believe she's like early teens. I want to say she's like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I think this is kind of early on also because it looks like she has her old outfit, like one of her first outfits. So practice makes perfect. Anakin wants to train her more in tougher situations. So she's not teaching her with droids. She's teaching her with actual humans or clones. I don't know. What'd you think, or what'd you think about this episode?
Well, first off, can we talk about the Kanan cameo?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
We both,
Caleb Doom at this point.
Oh yeah, that's right. Caleb, not Kanan, but Caleb.
Caleb Doom and Master Balaba. Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
and he's like watching Ahsoka like, oh, she's amazing. So that kind of makes it cool that he sort of admired Ahsoka. So when we saw that interaction in Rebels, it kind of meant a whole lot more.
Yes.
So,
but do you think he remembered her? Because that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time, but especially if he was like Ahsoka, I feel like he would have remembered her, but wouldn't have been like, "Oh, I was a big fan," blah blah blah, because that's not the Jedi way.
Right. Yeah.
He'd probably just like, but like just knowing that makes those moments a bit sweeter, I believe.
Yes.
But that's not the important part of the episode. The important part of the episode is that's what kept her alive.
Mm-hmm.
Anakin didn't realize it, but he was saving her. Yes. And I mean, I think it makes total sense because Anakin is scared of losing Padme. He was scared of losing his mom, and he lost his mom. So, of course, he's naturally going to be like, I don't want to lose my Padawan, so I'm going to force you to do this extra training. Because I know if you can do it against real human beings who have thought processes versus droids that are just doing it on command, you'll survive. And I don't have to worry about you. Mm-hmm. And then Ahsoka learns the value of it. And so she continues to train herself. When Anakin's like, yep, you're good, she continues to train herself. And then we realize that is exactly what saved her during Order 66. Yes. And it's just heartbreaking. I almost cried right there.
I definitely got emotional.
But I think it's a great episode. It shows Ahsoka's dedication. It showed what helped her survive. Because, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, hey, how did she survive? But all these other Jedi who have years of training didn't.
Yes, that's right.
Well, because she went above and beyond. She did something different.
Yep.
She didn't do the same old thing.
She obviously has developed a emotional attachment to the clones. Mm-hmm. Like, she's more in tune by their thinking and their actions, and it definitely makes sense when she's going up against all those platoons that are on that Star Destroyer on at the end of season 7 there.
Well, I think why the troops were also willing, in before Order 66 on their armor when she came back to fight. Remember in the Clone Wars final season, they were all wearing orange?
Yes.
Well, she got to learn more about them because she spent so much time with them. Well, they got to learn so much about her.
True.
And, it shows that the clones are people. They're not just weapons.
Yep.
So it brings a little more humanity to all of it.
It does. And I gotta say, like, especially this episode, there were a lot of, I felt like there was a lot of close-ups, and man, the animation detail in these, it's just ridiculous how good it's getting.
Yeah.
So anyway, so great way to connect to season 7, because it literally is, the last scene is literally season 7 of the Clone Wars. So that happens. So then now Resolve, which comes to her last of the 3 episodes. So right off the bat, something that we found out in the trailer, she attended Padme's funeral. Yes. I think that was an incredible tie-in. And of course, we see Bail and Mothma there, which I don't believe we saw in episode 3.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, I don't think we did. So Bail was there, Mon was there, Ahsoka was there. Pretty crazy that she was there. And then, of course, you get the first introduction, or not introduction, you kind of get the first step of Bail and Ahsoka kind of, getting together and wanting to help each other fight this off. So what was your reaction to seeing that?
Well, that first bit of the episode, it was just heartbreaking because, when Organa was like, why are you here? I mean, well, she had to be there for both Padme and Anakin.
Yes.
Anakin, nobody could find his body. He was just dead. So to her, this was her paying her respects to both Padme and Anakin. So I think that just makes you go, oh God, why?
Yes.
Mon and Bail there makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And then for me, I think it's just the perfect little planting of the seed for what Ahsoka does later on in joining the rebellion. It just helps connect it. It shows that the seed was planted. She just needed to act upon it.
Totally. Yeah. So then, so right away, that's it's a very emotional scene, and you can see the hurt in her eyes, and it just made a connection to her, even more so to Padme, and obviously connected her to the movies more so too. So now. Then we move on to shortly after Order 66, a little bit. She's been kind of on the run. Now, here's where it kind of gets a little hairy a little bit, because there was a book that came out called Ahsoka.
Yes.
By E.K. Johnston, and it takes place right after the Order 66. In fact, the book starts off with Order 66 and the Siege of Mandalore, which we already knew that Clone Wars Season 7 somewhat retconned that part. Here's the thing about all the talk that's going on at retconning. I understand that this is kind of a cheap way to explain it, or to kind of explain it so that people can live with it and move on. And they did this with Kanan too, with the Bad Batch, and that first episode with showing Kanan surviving Order 66. He had a comic that showed it as well. So it's like, obviously what they're doing, I believe what they're doing is, even though everything is canon, I believe it's still somewhat tiered. Like, ultimate canon is basically live action. And then you have, I believe, the animated shows. And then I believe you have the novels. And then I believe you have the comics and the games. So things that happen kind of on these bottom levels ultimately can be trumped, in a sense, by what if it comes out the same time or the same situation in live action or in animation. But I do want to say that I think what they do a good job in is that it's not completely different. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's talk about, for example, Kanan. In this comics, he's on a planet. I can't remember the planet's name. Order 66 happens. His master gets killed. He survives. The clones in that comic, they're like in red. They're like striped red, which we know now those were only the shock troopers. Mm-hmm. But in the comic, there is no Bad Batch. Now, in the Bad Batch, the first episode, we see Order 66 happen on that same. It is the same planet, mm-hmm. But the clones are not red. I think they're green.
Mm-hmm. I think
they're marked green or blue or something like that. Oh, they're not blue. I don't think they're blue because that's Anakin's. But the Bad Batch show up and all this stuff, right? So the situation is the exact same. The planet's the same. The clones turned. They killed Master Balaba. Caleb, Kanan survives. So the situation's the same. The details are kind of what gets. Well, it's the same thing. Technically, what happens in this episode, because the book of Ahsoka has this whole story about her showing up on a planet. Now the planet's named in Ahsoka, and I can't remember the planet. Sorry, but this planet here is not named. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily know, but we're assuming it's the same. But she's working on it, and she meets a family, and she's hanging out with the family, and then ultimately the same kind of thing happens where an Inquisitor comes and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, all the details aren't there as far as like what happened in the book, because this is obviously a 15-minute version of what happens in the book.
Yes.
But the situation of an Inquisitor comes, kind of destroys a plant, destroys a town, waiting for her to come back, and she comes back and defeats him. I mean, that situation's the same. So you can argue that, okay, it's not the exact same, but it's not like it completely changes the story in a sense where, somebody survives that didn't survive, or somebody got killed that survived in this book. You know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to go there first before we dive into the details of it. But you read Ahsoka, I think, right, too. So how did you feel about this episode and that being compared to that book and all that?
Well, I mean, I think also Tales of the Jedi. Sorry, Ahsoka, we went over in Beyond the Saga. Mm-hmm, so go back and listen to that episode.
That's right.
But watching this one, I was going, but wait, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. But I think the thing is, and this kind of ties into the continuity issue I have with Dooku's storyline, is I think it boils down to this. It is called Tales of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And so maybe these instances never really happened. Maybe the reason why they're telling these stories is they're trying to get certain messages across, trying to get certain perspectives across, certain points of views across. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to hold everything that happened verbatim.
Yes, and well, that's true. I do think these things happened. I think the best explanation, and I've said this many times, so hopefully our listeners and watchers remember this, but I think Pablo Hidalgo, one of the first story group, Lucasfilm story group members, I believe he said it best, which is, he explained it like this. Canon is not necessarily every detail. Canon is more or less the situation and the scene. For example, he gave the example in Star Wars Episode 4, when you had I think it was Mahdi and Tag and Tarkin and Vader all standing on the Death Star in that big wide room, right? He says, okay, look at that scene, and you can clearly see they're standing really close to each other because they have to, because the camera has to be on them. But in a room like that, they wouldn't be standing next to each other like that in real life. So he's like, it doesn't matter. So the canon is not that they were that close together. The canon is they all were standing in that room, right? So if you can kind of think of it that way, that makes a lot of sense, right? So in this situation, it's not that she knew this person, this person, this person on this planet, which is from the novel, maybe, this family. It's just that she was on this planet and she met a family. It's like, so it's kind of like you said, think about, and I've always thought about it like this. Like if I saw the situation and you saw the situation, but someone asked us, tell us what you saw, they're probably going to get two different stories out of us, right?
Right.
We have two different perspectives. So in all honesty, that's the way I've been trying to live with it, is that the Siege of Mandalore is a clear example too, from Ahsoka and from season 7. Mm-hmm. season 7 is one person's interpretation. The book is another person's interpretation. But what happened was Ahsoka defeated Maul and captured Maul. Now, again, if there's a blaring continuity issue, like if the novel had Ahsoka killing Maul and he survived, then you've got some problems, right?
Right.
But I don't believe we've run into that kind of problem yet with this, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. Kudos for keeping all the continuity together. I think the reason why I was able to let it go, though, after a little bit was like, okay, they're keeping the spirit of it true.
Yes, that's exactly right.
The spirit of what's happening is still there.
Yes.
It's just a very condensed version of it. So, but I thought of, like, once again, it shows Ahsoka was trying to distance herself from the Force. She was trying to... which I like, it does bring up the argument as to why Obi-Wan, like, he cut himself off and then he's awful when he's trying to get back into using the Force. Meanwhile, Ahsoka is like, all of a sudden, boom, Inquisitor gone. But I think a lot of that has to go with, in the book, Ahsoka is still meditating. She still has a connection of sorts with the Force, and she hasn't cut herself off from it as long as Obi-Wan has. So that makes sense. It shows Ahsoka coming to terms with the fact that she has to do something. She can't do nothing.
Right. Yes.
So, and I mean, like, that parallels perfectly with Dooku, because Dooku felt like he had no choice. He had to do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's a beautiful parallel of two stories of two Jedi who both are like, I've tried doing nothing. Nothing happened.
Yes.
I got to do something.
Mm-hmm. But it's the choice of light versus dark.
Bingo.
Right? So,
and I think that's what interweaves both stories.
Yes. Yes. But of course, you know, we're also brought into it's brought up again. It was in the novel, but she did face an Inquisitor.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one, you know, she's obviously faced an Inquisitor, meaning that, you know, you get fast forward to Rebels, those weren't the first Inquisitors she's come across. So,
well, heck, she got her 2 new lightsabers from that Inquisitor saber, which I secretly really wanted to see her stop. Like, I wanted to visually see what it looked like to stop crystals from bleeding.
Agreed. I was hoping to see that as well. And that might be something that might come later, you know, because I think there's going to be more of these. So now in the novels, which I believe she would do, because we obviously see her hilts later, she takes the crystals from this, since there's 2 crystals in there, and creates her 2 sabers. And of course, yeah, the theory is that healing bleeding crystals turns them back to white, and that's why her sabers are white when we see her in Rebels. So pretty awesome. And that was the first, now that novel Ahsoka was the first time that was explained.
Yes.
So kudos to them keeping that continuity of that explanation of bleeding crystals. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Now, I thought the fight, how quickly, I just thought that was awesome.
I was like, yep, she's great. She's awesome.
Yes. You just saw it in her face that she was not fearful at all. She knew exactly what she was going to do. No, she's easily has become one of the most, if not, she's easily, arguably one of the most popular Star Wars characters now. And I think Dave Filoni's done a hell of a job growing her character. And even though we're bouncing around in her timeline, it's amazing how much we're able to see new stuff from her.
Absolutely. And her being fearless ties into the first episode. It's like a full circle.
That's right. Okay. So moving on to Dooku now. Now, here's the thing too that I'm not sure I thought was pretty amazing. The other slight connection with Dooku and Ahsoka is, I don't know if you realize this. So the planet that Ahsoka was on just now, right? We talked about fighting the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
I believe it's actually the same planet that Dooku's on in his first episode.
Is it?
Yes. The one where he goes and it's run down and the villagers have kids. Because if you pay attention, the same droids are putting up the bales of hay on the lifts, and
wow.
And I believe there's a couple of the characters that are still the same.
What? I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, I think the male Twi'lek is in both. So I think it's intentional that those are supposed to highlight like those are the same two planets and their paths crossed both of those planets. Is what I'm assuming. I could be wrong, but that's what it looked like. Anyway, this episode, Justice, shows a young Dooku, a young Qui-Gon. I failed to mention when we were talking about Ahsoka, but really evident in the Dooku stuff is the music during these scenes. Mm-hmm. It just is just unbelievable. So what do you think about this first episode of Dooku here?
I mean, watching it, first off, love the fact that we're seeing Dooku and Qui-Gon on the same screen. That's fantastic. Get to see their dynamic. I'm assuming Qui-Gon isn't a Padawan at this point because I didn't see him wearing a braid. But
that's a good observation. I think you could be right. I think you could be right that he's probably a knight at this point.
I think he's a knight or like a brand new knight, and this could have been his first time out. Because there's still him, like, yes, masters call each other masters, but there's still a lot of reverence and respect Qui-Gon has for Dooku. So I think it was fairly recently he was a Jedi Master. This could have been his first or one of his first missions with Dooku as master and master versus master and apprentice and Padawan.
Yeah. But if you're a Jedi Knight, I don't know if you still have a Padawan. I guess you don't have a you're not, you don't have a master anymore.
No, you don't.
You don't.
But
okay.
You would still refer to each other as masters, I believe.
Yes.
Obi-Wan called Anakin Master Skywalker before he had Ahsoka as his Padawan, right? I think.
Well, Ahsoka called him Master Skywalker because he was her master. I don't know if, they probably call each other master, I guess. That's weird. I don't know that. That's an interesting point. Is Qui-Gon a Padawan at this point or not? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he's not wearing a braid. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a Padawan because we've heard about Padawans who've lost their braids and then they have to regrow their hair.
Right.
So,
I mean, he's fairly young. So I going into this episode, I assumed he was a Padawan.
I thought so too, but then I didn't see a braid, and I'm like, "Where's his braid?"
Yeah, maybe they all don't have braids. I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, but I think this episode really gives us a glimpse into Dooku's thinking, and also shows that turning to the dark side takes time, and there's a lot of rationalization and justification that's backed up behind it. And I mean, listening to what Dooku was saying and Dooku's thought process and all that, it's like, can't blame the guy.
No, definitely
can't blame the guy. And the fact that Dooku's also taking the standpoint of, and like we see this throughout the episodes, but I think in this episode, this is when he truly does see The Jedi were sent there to rescue the senator's son. But Dooku's like, that's not really the problem going on here.
Right.
It's really this. So that's the first seed planted of, are the Jedi really doing what's right? Are they really fighting for the Republic? And that's what Dooku wanted all along. He wanted to fight for the Republic, and the Republic is fighting for the people. Not just for the
to him,
senator.
to him, the Republic's failing the people.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, no, I'm going to fight for the people. That's the Republic to me.
Yes. No, that was clearly to me the best line. Mm-hmm. In that, what he was saying, something like, when the senator was saying, you're supposed to be, I don't know, fighting for the Republic or something. I think, no, I'm supposed to be, protecting the people of the Republic. And that set the whole thing up for his character. It was, he's clearly seeing, what has existed over this time, which is basically corruption in the Republic, and with certain senators, and it wasn't all of them, but it was a majority of them, and unfortunately, it's the ones that he came across.
Yeah.
In these two instances, these two episodes here, but this was, this was pretty powerful. I feel like, and honestly, even more so powerful that Qui-Gon got to see it.
Qui-Gon got to see the seeds being planted. And we see in the book Master and Apprentice, Qui-Gon didn't recognize it, but he did see seeds of that being planted in advance. And I think
yes,
it shows. And you could, once again, kudos to the animators, because you could see that darkness in Dooku's eyes.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
At the same time, you're like, no, dude, I get it. Don't necessarily agree with your methods, but I get it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he threw back, like that moment when he threw back Qui-Gon.
I know.
And Qui-Gon was like, oh no.
Yeah.
This is going to end poorly.
And just a little background too with Dooku, Master and Apprentice. I remember, because we're going to do a Beyond the Saga on that here soon. And I think, I thought maybe this might have some kind of relevance to it. It's not so much because, Master and Apprentice is more about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. But there is an audiobook out there called Dooku Jedi Lost. And we haven't done that yet because you haven't read that yet.
It's going on my list.
Yeah, it was an audiobook. It is a novel now, like the script. It's a script version of it is in a book now. But the audiobook's fantastic because it's a cast, right? So with that audiobook, just a kind of rough overview of it, it covers Dooku's life in a sense where it explains where he was born, which is a planet called Sereno, and that his family is wealthy, and his father was a count, mother was a countess. He had a brother and a sister, and anyway, but he obviously left and went to the Jedi route. And so it shows kind of his relationship with his family still as a Jedi, but then it also does give the reason why he walks away from the Order. So that audiobook is technically intertwined with these episodes. So it parts of the book take place before this, but then parts of the audiobook takes place after this. So if you are interested in getting the full story of Dooku and you read and you listen to that or read that and then watch these, you will see that it does somewhat fit in place. Now we'll get to the part I think you were talking about is this is somewhat of a question mark, but anyway, he's still obviously in the Jedi Order at this point, training Qui-Gon at this point. So, and seeing for the first time, it feels like the corruption that ultimately is going to consume him.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I think this is the planet that we see later on that has eventually starts to flourish when Ahsoka comes back. But that was an incredible first episode seeing him.
Oh yes.
Second episode, third episode of the series, Choices. Another mission to a planet, and now this mission is with Mace Windu. So, what did you think of this episode?
I think once again, this just takes Dooku down the path further of the Jedi are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The Jedi are helping the wrong people. They're just fueling corruption instead of trying to unwind it. They're making it worse. And I mean, in the beginning, just with this conversation with Mace is like, "What are you doing, Dooku? We're only here for this." And Dooku's like, "Yeah, sure, we're only here for this." Right. Oh, by the way, could you tell us what happened? And could you take us to this spot? Like,
yes.
It just shows that the council's not listening to him.
Mm-hmm.
And Dooku's having none of it. And Dooku is trying everything he can to bring to light the problems of the Republic and trying to show the Jedi we're not doing the Republic a service. I mean, it makes you agree with Anakin with, well, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. I mean, like, it starts to make a little bit of sense.
Yes, I know. Yeah, the point of view, certain point of view, right? That's the whole, one of the big themes of Star Wars. And you're right. I mean, the way someone sees a situation is different than somebody else. And, obviously Mace and Dooku are seeing this situation differently. And it was a great decision to put Mace in this situation because obviously we know Mace as probably one of the most powerful and wisest Jedi, right? By the time we meet him in episode 1, he's been on the council. He's number 2, basically, to Yoda. And for him to be here and witness this and not see the darkness that Dooku sees, right? So, it starts coming into question, is Dooku being manipulated, or is he actually, does he have that kind of in his heart already, and that's how he sees it like that? Or is he choosing to see it that way? Or is Mace just stronger in the light that he's able to look past it to try different things? Or are the Jedi actually truly blind to what their responsibilities are at this, leading up? Is that really what is it really what led to their demise? Because also you can make the argument that at this point in time, which I want to say this takes place roughly 10 to 15 years before episode 1. You can make the argument that Palpatine at this point is probably a Sith Lord already, right? So he's either a Sith Lord or he's the apprentice to Darth Plagueis, right?
Oh yeah.
And the Sith have been out there. We know that they've been out there, right, for 1,000 years or something. The rule of 2. It goes back to what Yoda was saying in episode 2. Like, the dark side has clouded us, has clouded our judgment, has clouded. I mean, is that happening even now? You can make that argument, right?
Absolutely.
I believe you can.
I totally believe you can. And I think maybe at this point, Palpatine started planting the seeds.
Absolutely.
Or maybe after this, especially when Mace was asked to join the council. And I love the delivery of the line of, like, I think Dooku said something along the lines of, "Thank you, Master," or whatever like. Just the bitterness pouring through the line is like, whoa. So maybe that was maybe after that is when he ran into Palpatine. Maybe that's when Palpatine became a Sith Lord at that point, because Dooku's vulnerable at this point, and he doesn't necessarily know what to do.
Yeah. It's tough. We don't know. I think eventually we are going to get Palpatine's backstory and full story. I think that we're going to get that eventually.
Please.
Yes. So we can start lining up timelines on when he actually became a Sith and when. I mean, I don't think it's canon anymore, but in the book Darth Plagueis, prior to canon, he didn't kill Plagueis until basically during episode 1.
Yeah.
So I don't think that that's going to be canon anymore. I think that we're going to see that happened way before that. But but so as we learn more about that, we can kind of line up when he fully engages Dooku, and because that's the thing. That's the thing. What's interesting about it, well, we'll get to it, I guess, in the next episode. What's interesting is it didn't seem like it was always about the dark side. It was really just about the corruption.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? And that kind of just grew in him and made it become a dark side type feeling, right? So very similar, like you said, very similar to Anakin. I mean,
it was just this growing hate.
It was this growing feeling that something's not right. And I'm seeing it differently than the Jedi are, and not really knowing you're being manipulated and corrupted. So
I think the other part of it too is that I think Dooku's like, Mace, you have a chance to do something. The council won't listen to me. You're about to be on the council. You have a chance to do. And Mace essentially, in subtext, said, "Is what it is."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like when the bitterness just exponentially grew. And that's why you get all that bitterness from that line of like, master.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like even the people who witnessed it firsthand, the Jedi who witnessed it firsthand, isn't going to do anything about it.
Yeah. I thought too, just as an animation, pointing out the animation again, their fight, him and Mace's fighting. I think it's the way they animate it now is so realistic versus like if you watch the Clone Wars again, like they tend to do the action really fast. Like it's, their movements are so fast, almost like they're skipping frames almost, right?
Right.
But this, you're like, you just see him flying and floating, like when Mace is flipping through the air and he's, I mean, it was fantastic. It was fantastic.
It was great.
Man, I know it's a whole nother conversation, but how awesome would it have been if these would have been live action? But yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Okay, so we get through this episode, like you said, Mace ends up getting on the council, and Dooku, you can kind of see his reaction is growing and things like that. So, all right, so we get to the third episode of his, which is called The Sith Lord, and this was the one everybody's waiting for because we're teased that Yaddle is going to be in this, who is voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard, actually, which is incredible.
It was great.
So we start off with an interesting scene here, which is him. We finally see him deleting the Camino entry, but under the, I guess, identity of Sifo Dyas, who we know that he from the clone, we know this from the Clone Wars also, that he obviously imprisoned Sifo Dyas, and he's been impersonating him in a sense to, order the clones, obviously delete the Camino. I kind of, the one thing about this, Hannah, I don't know if you felt this way, but I did kind of think that seemed awfully easy.
It did. It did seem easy. It was well. The other thing that confused me was I'm like, isn't he supposed to be away from the Jedi at this point?
Yes, that's another thing.
He came back, like, which is fine.
Yes,
and it seems like that's the case. But I mean, it seemed way too easy. It's like it couldn't have been that easy.
Yeah. So let's catch everybody up real fast. So. I'm not spoiling anything for the book mainly, but what happens in the book, the Dooku Lost, is that there's a situation on his home planet Sereno, and he becomes the new count. And this takes place about 40, it's like 4039 BBY. So this is like 10, this is like 8 or 9 years before episode 1. So even in the book, which is pretty cool, he decides in order to kind of help rebuild Sereno, he needs to leave the Jedi Order and do this. He even goes to hand Yoda his lightsaber. But Yoda says something in the lines of, even though you're not a Jedi, you are always a Jedi. Mm. So he keeps his saber. That's why he still has his saber. But according to what I've read online, based on this coming out now, is that even though he was the Count of Sereno, he still visited Coruscant very regularly. And of course, still being maybe not an active Jedi, but being a former Jedi, he's able to still walk, and he still kind of, he doesn't obviously do Jedi things, but he does meet up with them and stuff like that. That partially that's kind of the one wrench I have with all of this, really. And it's not so much that, okay, he's a count and he comes back, but to me that a little bit defeats the idea that George introduced, which was the Lost 20.
Yeah.
You remember that? And the Lost 20 represents people that left the Order, like almost like fully left the Order. I don't feel like he left the Order in this sense, like in his situation now, because it was almost like he was forced to, just because he was doing it to be a humanitarian in a sense. Not like he left it because it was like, even though he does have these feelings of corruption, but it wasn't like he left it like he turned his back on the Order and went dark.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what kind of sounded like the Lost 20 was. But maybe that's not true, and maybe that makes sense to everybody, but it kind of is a little hazy for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's hazy for me too. I mean, it's like, and maybe the way that it works is that hindsight 2020 in Attack of the Clones, he was part of that because he technically did fully leave it. The dark side?
Yes. At that point, yes.
At that point. But in the moment, he hasn't left it yet.
That's right.
So maybe it's just one of those things where it's like in the moment he has it, but hindsight 2020, he totally did.
Yes. Yeah, he ends up being definitely a Lost 20. But she called him that during episode 2, which I guess that at that point maybe he isn't considered a Lost 20 yet at this point. That might be it. Because it was in episode 2 that Jocasta Sanu said that to Obi-Wan, and maybe at that point he was considered, because at that point he was a separatist. He was with. Yeah. I mean, so maybe that's right. All right. So anyway, we have a great scene here with when we first introduced to Yaddle, and then of course we see Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon. Oh, which was amazing.
Yes.
I died.
Liam Neeson back as voice. And this is what's crazy. What's cool about this is during episode 1.
Yes.
So he has come. This is after they escaped Tatooine. They brought Anakin here. He's reporting on his battle with Maul. And Dooku is asking him about that. Now, what's crazy is that he had to have known about Maul, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, Yeah, of course. I mean, later on we see he's like, you went too far with Maul. Like, he knew about Maul.
Yep.
But he also knew about the dark side. The fact he's like, I kept on telling the council, and that ties in Dooku's. And I think this is the other thing too, and we'll talk about this in Beyond the Saga. But in Master and Apprentice, we see that Dooku used to be very obsessed with prophecies.
Yes.
And then we sort of see that obsession come back. So I always thought, not listening to the Dooku audiobook, I always thought that his obsession with that prophecy about there being a chosen one is what drove him to the dark side. I always thought that was it. But now it looks like that might have just been a piece of it because he, but we see that come back into play, which I think was a beautiful piece of consistency there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with that.
But
let's see.
I mean, it shows once again, but it shows that Qui-Gon at least was trying to do something. And he seemed to be the only one who was trying to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Master and Apprentice was definitely a good story about the prophecies and obviously we're seeing now, and Dooku Jedi Lost, honestly, too, was kind of a catalyst of that, too, because Dooku was obsessed with prophecies as well. And the fact that he was best buddies, basically, with Sifo-Dyas, who had premonition powers. So he knew a lot about hearing from him what was coming and the possibilities of what futures held. So, So it definitely went from master to teacher when it comes from Dooku to Qui-Gon. Now, again, this was an interesting, because I feel like this was a burning question with fans forever, was what happened to Yaddle between episodes 1 and episode 2? Mm-hmm. So we obviously clearly get the answer to that. Tell me your feelings and thoughts as you were seeing that whole thing playing out.
Well, first I want to say, to me, the final straw that broke the camel's back was Obi-Wan's death. And I think if anything would have sent Dooku back
Qui-Gon's death.
Oh, sorry, Qui-Gon, not Obi-Wan. Not Obi-Wan, yeah. Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon's death. And if there was anything that would have sent him back to the light side, it would have been that.
Yes.
But then, we see that Dooku officially makes his choice between Yaddle and Sidious. I genuinely believe Yaddle followed Dooku because she was concerned about him. Mm-hmm. I don't think she did it because she was suspicious or anything.
Oh, really? Not suspicious, huh? Okay.
I genuinely believe she was following him because she was worried. Because I think she probably sensed a little bit of that darkness. And, it makes sense. You lose someone close to you, it's going to hurt. Like, I don't care how disconnected you are from someone. It's going to hurt on one level or another, especially if you had a relationship with them.
Right.
So I think she followed him out of concern, not out of suspicion. And then she just happened to stumble across. And she's like, Dooku, we can make this work. And of course, Dooku makes his choice.
Right.
And I think he realized that Qui-Gon was the only other person who could potentially do something. And now he's dead.
Yes.
And so one thing I would have loved to have seen, and I was talking to my husband about this, is I would love to have seen when Dooku made that choice to see his crystal bleed and have his lightsaber turn. However, if you did that, then we would lose all consistency, because why didn't Anakin's saber do that on Mustafar?
Yeah, there is a I think I want to say we see it in the comics with Kylo Ren. I believe that's the only place we've seen it where obviously he pushed so hard, he cracked his crystal, and that's why it has that
weird
char look, that unstable look to it. In the Vader comic, I want to say he might have done it too, because he goes and hunts down a Jedi and takes his saber, and that's what becomes Vader's saber, right?
So maybe it's the fact of you have to steal another saber, but
no, that's not true.
Saber. Yeah,
no, because Kylo made his original one bleed.
Yeah.
I think Dooku eventually will make, because that's his saber. I mean, that's the same hilt. So, but it is a process. I think you actually physically have to hold it in your hand.
Oh,
and you have to basically make it submit to the dark side, basically.
Okay. Well,
I think cool that's. I agree. I think it'd be really cool to see. I just was blown away by far. When I'm watching this episode and I'm seeing, okay, Yaddle's in it talking, and I love Bryce's voice of her. I clearly think she was perfect for it. When she was following Dooku, and all of a sudden we get to this familiar location from episode 2, I truly, it was like, wait a minute, are you truly going to show Yaddle actually see Sidious? Because that's pretty major.
That's huge. Huge.
I mean, she could have ended it right. She could have ended it right there.
She could have.
I mean, it's crazy to think, but yes, she could have ended it right there. So that whole thing, and then of course you're getting, what I love most, one of the things I loved most about this scene is we got Ian McDermott's voice.
I know. I was like, holy smokes. They brought him back for 5 lines. They brought Liam Neeson back for 5 lines.
Yes. Obviously, unfortunately, Christopher Lee has passed away.
Yeah.
So he could not do Dooku. But I believe this is the same person that does Dooku in the Clone Wars, right?
I think it is.
Is it Corey Burton? Is that?
I'm fairly certain.
Sound familiar? Yeah. So we get Corey Burton as Dooku. Mm-hmm. So the fight obviously very reminiscent of what we see with Dooku and Yoda later in episode 2. Obviously Yaddle fights relatively the same way, but clearly not as powerful as Yoda. No. So that whole, I think that maybe that whole characteristic of all these species being the most powerful Jedi is not true. Yoda truly is a unique Jedi character with all that power.
Maybe it's just that the Force comes a little easier to them. Maybe
they probably do have a lot of midi-chlorian counts, that makes them very sensitive, but Yoda clearly has a lot more.
It's off the charts.
It's off the charts. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, to wrap that up, kind of her fate, fortunately came. I'm actually. It's funny because I'm obviously not glad she got killed, but I'm happy. I'm glad that they made it still that he struck her down. Because I when that closed, it's like, wait a minute, how could she survive that kind of thing? Clearly, there might have been some space there that she was able to kind of, that doesn't go out of the realm of possibility. But the fact that she was able to still come out of that, and then he made the decision, because that's ultimately what happens when you turn to the dark side. You have to make that decision. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty neat.
That was fantastic. I mean, the whole thing was just brilliantly told. And I mean, part of me thinks that all of these episodes were too short.
Yes. I definitely want more, for sure.
Oh, I definitely want more. But I think also they did what they came to do brilliantly.
Yeah.
Yes, they were short, but they were great stories.
They're tales, right?
Exactly.
which means I hope that I do, which I think we will. I think we're going to get a lot more of these. I think we're going to get a lot more of these.
See, I could be behind this. Like, I know before in previous episodes we talked about, do we want to hear more of these stories or do we want to move on? I think if we just have like little snapshots like this, I think that's enjoyable and a nice little bite size without going over the top.
Do you know what I've read that people think will be the next series?
Oh no. Han and Chewie?
No, these are Jedi's. Tales of the Jedi.
Oh yeah, Tales as well. Maybe Chewie's secretly a Jedi, ex-Jedi.
Which I know you're gonna freak out when
Darth Bane?
No, not that far back. Still around this timeline.
Oh, still around this. Okay, who?
Basically the unfinished arcs of Ventress and Quinlan Voss. Right?
If it's not that now, I will be upset.
I know, right? I feel the same exact way. Because because if you really think about this, even though I know for a fact, well, I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure these weren't planned Clone Wars episodes. Like, these are brand new, new storylines. But you can't help to wonder, okay, wait a minute. I've got these unfinished Clone Wars stories that now I can actually fit into this. Why wouldn't you?
Maybe this was a test run.
That's kind of what I feel like.
Oh man, I really hope so, because there's so many things in the Clone Wars that you could explore that didn't make it.
Totally. Well, think about this now, because it probably won't be the exact storylines that were from Dark Disciple, because Dark Disciple is out there now, right? Dark Disciple is the book that made up for those unfinished episodes. But you definitely could still intertwine some of the Ventress storyline with that. And you can definitely go beyond that with Quinlan, because we know Quinlan now was in the Obi-Wan series, helping, right?
I know, like, I saw him, I'm like, wait, seriously? Like,
So we know he's alive after that. So he survived Order 66 as well. So to see that, I think that would be unbelievable. So
that would be.
So I'm hoping we see that. Is this a way you bring back Mace Windu?
Maybe.
Right? I mean, I don't know, so definitely there's going to be more tales. And I also think this is a pathway to really start introducing possibly a High Republic era in animation. Because it doesn't mean, Tales of the Jedi doesn't mean we're stuck in a certain era.
No, it doesn't. And maybe that's a way that they kind of bridge the books and the comics to viewers before Acolyte comes out.
Yep. Very true. And you could even, dare I say, go beyond The Rise of Skywalker.
You could. It could be a way that they could tease these supposed trilogies that are happening. We don't know if they're happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, this could be a perfect way to kind of connect everything together.
Yep. To bring Rey back and maybe a Jedi Finn and stuff like that. So anyway, we'll see. I really think that this is going to be I've heard nothing but positive things about this series. People are going crazy about this. It's been trending all day, all weekend, or all week. I mean, it's just a home run. I think if they don't have other ones already kind of getting worked on, then they're missing out, because I'm pretty sure fans want these things.
Absolutely.
Anyway, all right. So that's Hannah. That's our longest episode together so far. Obviously,
woohoo!
Yeah, glad you're able to stay awake with me and talk about this. But this was a big. I think we both been dying to talk about this, and of course, I think we'll keep talking about this more as we get into other stories and things come up about it that we haven't even covered. But But I will tell you, like for me, I'm looking at this image right now of Yaddle, Sidious, and Dooku. You know, I'm thinking like, I mean, even that location now in episode 2 is freaking different now. You look at it different now. That's where Yaddle was killed.
I know, and you're like,
I know, right? Oh my gosh. So, you know, one question that's lingering out there, real quick, last question for you. Do you think the Jedi ever find her body?
I don't know. I mean,
like, do they even know what, like, obviously they have no idea what happened to her.
They don't know what happened to her, so I don't think they do.
I don't think they do either.
I think Dooku probably hides the body.
I think basically she just disappeared.
She disappeared.
I have no idea what happened to her. That's sad. That's really sad.
That is very sad.
Yeah.
But Dooku would have gone searching for her and figured out what she did, what happened to her.
Yeah. Yeah, would think somebody would have.
Dooku would have.
Yep. But Dooku's character has definitely gone up in my book based on knowing all this now.
I mean, I mean, hashtag Team Dooku, but don't support his actions.
Yeah. No, I mean,
is that possible?
Well, it's good to see kind of it's good to understand his character, right?
Really understandable. And you're sitting there going, you know what? I don't blame you.
Right.
I don't blame you. I mean, that's technically what the rebels did.
That's right.
They technically said, well, what we're doing now is not working. We got to step up and take action.
That's right.
It's the same exact mindset. It's just a different side.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just crazy because, you know, we're first introduced to him as a Sith Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no idea his backstory at that point. Now that we have it, episode 2 is different, man. I'm telling you, episode
Very
2
different.
is different.
I now want to rewatch the interaction between him and Obi-Wan.
Yes.
And
yeah, because he says he's never met him before.
Yeah.
That was his first, because he does say in episode 2, he's like, I wish our paths crossed before. I would have, you know, Obi-Wan, or he said, Qui-Gon spoke very highly of you. I mean, it's like, it's such a different meaning now. I mean, all these stories, even though no matter how many times people want to say, I don't want these, I want to go beyond this, I want to get new characters. It's like, I mean, these are to me, they're improving scenes in these movies. They're making the movies rewatchable in a different perspective.
They absolutely are.
Right? And I love that about it. That's what I love about the Star Wars stuff.
I mean, I love it, but I feel like there's a delicate balance. Like, do I think that, I mean, we've already talked about this, but do I think Obi-Wan was necessary? No, not really.
Right.
But I think this is.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think there's definitely a line of what is considered relevant to know versus fan service and nice to have. I definitely think Obi-Wan is one of those nice to haves. I think Andor is going to end up being really relevant, if not already, to, you know, the backstory of the rebellion.
I completely agree with you.
And this is very relevant, I believe, too. You're right. Okay, so that's all the time I'm going to take of Hannah's tonight. And, of course, everybody listening, thanks for being with us through this hour, and I think it's an hour and a half long episode. But that's a lot to digest. And like I said, we're gonna keep bringing this series up because we're both on board with it. And of course, we still have 4 episodes of Andor left. So we'll be back next week talking about episode 9 of Andor. Of course, go check out the Mandalore podcast. We're going to get a deep dive into these Andor episodes and then be back here on our YouTube channel for all of our other shows. Thank you, Hannah, for your insight. Fantastic. Fantastic discussions.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the fantastic discussion as well. Great insight, great conversation.
Yes.
Many more to come.
Many more to come. That's right. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. May the Force be with you.